climate change and human activity, deforestation, hunting of animals, littering of nature with waste, all this has a very detrimental effect on the animal world. Animals are not just suffering from all this, but are dying out right in front of our eyes. Before I start, I want to tell you about my new channel Visioner Interesting, in which I talk about interesting facts and events. I put the link to the channel in the video description, as well as in the top right corner. So, let's continue. The Chinese river dolphin was one of the rarest mammals on Earth, common in the central eastern part of China, mainly in the Yangtze River. It was a beautiful, grandiose animal with a very long, narrow, and slightly closed upward beak. Until 1900, its numbers were as high as 5,000 individuals. High mortality from entanglement in fishing drifts, collisions with ships, underwater blasting during canal maintenance, and illegal hunting of river dolphin for meat and fat has caused great damage to the dolphin population, and by 1990 their number was already about 200 individuals. In spite of the recent ban on hunting of the river dolphin, a special international expedition held in November 2006 stated that the Chinese river dolphin had completely disappeared. The laughing owl, or New Zealand gaggle owl. This bird gets its name from its distinctive sound, which resembles a rolling laughter. As recently as a century and a half ago, the laughing owl was doing just fine among the Rockies and the dense forests of New Zealand. But the advent of man, and with it the rapidly breeding cats and ermines, led to the fact that by the end of the 1980s the number of the species began to decline rapidly, and in the early 20th century the harmless giggles disappeared forever. Quaggas lived in South Africa. They had a striped coloration on the front, like a zebra, and a natty coloration on the back, like a horse. The quagga is almost the only extinct animal whose representatives were tamed by humans and used to guard the herds. Quaggas much earlier than domestic sheep, cows, and chickens noticed the approach of predators and warned their owners with a loud cry of quaha, from which they got their name. The last wild quagga was killed in 1878. The last quagga in the world died in the Amsterdam Zoo at the end of the 19th century. Native to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, the Licon pogo sticker. Despite their diminutive build, they were aggressive and determined, and it was not difficult for them to drive away larger competitors, especially when it came to their favorite seabird eggs. The wings of pogo stickers were too small, and their rounded shape and the structure of their wing feathers did not allow their owners to fly. They were ruined by rabbits. Once on Licon Island in the late 19th century, rabbits behaved like the very real conquerors, having no natural enemies here and taking advantage of the unlimited food supply. These furry aliens began to multiply at a truly tiny rate. Whoever brought the rabbits to Licon soon had to regret it. These shrewd creatures ate all the vegetation, turning the once blooming island into a desert. The Licon Paganis were deprived of food and by 1923 had disappeared altogether. In the 18th and 19th centuries, tarpans, or Eurasian wild horses, inhabited the steppe expanses of Europe, the European part of Russia, Kazakhstan, and western Siberia. These squat, mouse-colored wild horses with dark stripes on their backs, thick manes, and strong hooves that did not know horseshoes completely disappeared from the face of the earth within just 15 years from 1875 to 1890. It was at the end of the 19th century, while trying to catch it, the last tarpan living in the wild was killed. According to other data, the last tarpan died in 1918. This happened on the territory of Poltava province. Since far back in 1880, this photo is considered to be the only lifetime photo. With a wingspan of about 76 centimeters and a length of more than half a meter, white-billed royal woodpeckers are considered one of the largest woodpeckers on Earth. Royal white-billed woodpeckers choose their partners once and for life. Inhabitants of the dense perennial forests of the southeastern United States, they not only travel together, but share equally in all parental concerns. These noble birds do everything together, building nests, nursing eggs, and feeding the babies. And in addition to that, the male looks after them at night. Deforestation and trade in birds led to the fact that in the late 19th century, the population of any royal woodpeckers was virtually reduced to zero. But, according to some scientists, there remains a ghostly hope that we will still be able to see these beautiful birds in the wild. The Caspian tiger or Transcaucasian tiger had an impressive size. These large wild cats inhabited vast territories along the shores of the Black and Caspian Seas, northern Iran, parts of Afghanistan and Central Asia, and have always been the object of hunting. The extermination of Caspian tigers became widespread at the end of the 19th century when the Russian Empire began its conquest of Turkestan. Their path to complete extinction began in 1887 in Iraq, and the last of the Transcaucasian tigers was seen in the 1970s near the borders of Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. The last unconfirmed rumors of an encounter with a Caspian tiger date back to the early 1990s. The history of the wandering pigeon is one of the most dramatic. Only a few decades passed from their heyday to the complete extinction of their species. In the first half of the 19th century, the population of the wandering pigeon was considered one of the largest and most widespread in the wild. It is estimated that there were about 5 billion of these birds in the United States alone at the time of the first settlers from Europe, with individual flocks of as many as 1 million. Despite the truly gigantic size of the population, by the end of the 19th century its numbers had all but fallen to zero. Poaching in the first place was the reason why the once widespread species of traveling pigeon was completely wiped out. In those days, affordable and cheap pigeon meat was a real salvation for the poor. It was also purchased to feed slaves. The sale of pigeon meat was widely advertised and led to an unprecedented increase in the hunting of stray pigeons. In a matter of 20 years from the 1870s to the 1890s, the multi-billion-dollar pigeon populations were nothing but a memory. All this led to the fact that on September 1, 1914, the last female traveling pigeon left this world at the Cincinnati Zoo. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Tasmania was considered the main habitat of the marsupial wolf, Tilacina. However, in the 1930s the mass extermination of the animal, which was mistakenly considered the exterminator of domestic sheep and poultry, began. In 1863 the number of Tilacin decreased considerably. The marsupial wolf could be found only in the mountainous and forest areas of Tasmania, which were almost inaccessible to humans. One of the reasons for the decline in numbers was also the canine plague, which broke out at the beginning of the 20th century, probably not without the help of drive dogs. This resulted in the number of animals numbering in the single digits in 1914. On May 30, 1930, the last wolf was killed, and in 1936 the last son, held in captivity in a private zoo, died of old age. Further searches for this wolf were unsuccessful, and all accounts of encounters with this animal have not been documented. Abingdon elephant tortoises, inhabitants of the uninhabited island of Pinto, part of the urban islands of Ecuador, have long been considered extinct. Most of these turtles had been exterminated as early as the 19th century, and in the mid-20th century, scientists were ready to issue an official verdict by assigning them the status of a dead species. But in 1970, the Lone George was discovered. The encounter with the Lone George gave biologists hope for the renewal of a species that was teetering on the brink of life and death. However, all attempts to get the male to continue his lineage ended in a fiasco. George ignored all his mates, preferring solitude and fully justifying the first part of his name. On June 24, 2012, the turtle was gone, and with it the story of the Abingdon elephant turtle's existence ended. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and write what you think about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to me.